Um, Unaccustomed as I am to using a podium, I'm going to try to make this work even better and learn something myself, because I almost always use a podium. But I want to start out the presentation by making a couple of statements here. I want to put the first slide up. And did you realize that twice as many people in China watched the NBA Finals last year as from the U.S.? That's a true story, and background of this slide here is the fact that innovation and the business that all of you are in is the solution to an awful lot of the world's problems, because this is the only place in the world where jobs come from in general. I mean, all the startups in the U.S., there's a history of data from the Kauffman Foundation, which is the preeminent research firm here in the U.S., that said that there was a 15-year period, I've forgotten exact days, it was from sometime in the middle 80s up until a little bit later in the 90s, when the only jobs in the world in the U.S. that were created by venture-backed companies, many of which were started right here in this part of the world, in this city and this region that we live in, and there were a few others. But that was without that, there would have been no job growth at all in the U.S. economy in that 15-year period. And one of the things that I've traveled around and always tried to get everybody to understand, and anywhere I've spoken, and I started a venture fund in China, DCM Ventures, and we did really well over there, still doing very well there. But it was like maybe 10 or 15 years later, after the U.S. VC operation had gotten going, and the Chinese government didn't even know how to spell venture capital. And so I just want to leave a message with anybody that has any ability to influence administrators and government officials there, that they should support the kinds of things that we're doing here in this room, and because that's where all the job creation is going to come from. And one of the things that will happen is if we get more jobs being created, all this fighting and this bickering between the Chinese and the U.S. government should start to subside a little bit, and hopefully that'll relieve some of the pressure that we've all been concerned about and seeing in all the press lately. So that's a plea on my part, and I try to deliver that message whenever and however I can. So it means for all you young people and entrepreneurs and investors, just pay attention to the great entrepreneurs that you're backing, and know enough about what they're doing that you can trust and respect them and help them grow and build, and that's where all the jobs are going to come from. And that'll be a solution, probably never totally, but at least it'll help the situation that's pretty bad right now get better, hopefully. Opening message. The next thing I want to do, I've just updated all my slides for this presentation here. This has been one of the favorite slides that I've ever gotten feedback on, selected attributes of great entrepreneurs. And you all can read, and by the way, I'd be happy to, I think the group here will provide you copies of these slides so you don't have to take notes. And think globally and act locally. Great entrepreneurs have a passion for winning. They have integrity and character and self-confidence, positive attitude, high energy, all the things that you would expect. But one of the most important ones that is not always emphasized is the ability to inspire trust and confidence in other people. They got to have dedication and commitment and tenacity as well. They have to be proactive, can't be reactive. Reactive is what happens to the second and the third place players in some new category that your company creates. And when you go dominate it, everybody that knows anything about venture knows that the top performing company in a new segment that gets created, and believe me, we create a lot of them here all the time in Silicon Valley, the top category always has a disproportionately higher share of the market value of the other second and tertiary competitors that are trying to go after that same segment. Like to see a visionary, and listening is always important. We all know that, but we always don't do it. And I'm one of the worst offenders of that. And you also have to be willing to take risk and be prudent about it. Oops, sorry, going the wrong way. Just a quick summary of some of the data about global VC investment data here over the last 6 years. Venture capital on a global basis, and we have to think globally, has continued to go from what it was down there in, I can't even see the chart there, it's got it on here, that's 2012, all the way over to 207 billion in 2018. That's a, 5 or 6-fold, something like that. So the world wants to invest in venture capital. It wants to back startups. I mean, at least the people that are running, venture firms, and investing in venture firms know that, and many of you are here today. The rest of the world doesn't always know that, so I think that that's an important thing to keep. Got to keep this new projector for me. Okay, this is just a quick update on 2019. We're off to a pretty good start again this year, and I think the main takeaway from this chart here is that the investment activity in the world is becoming much more diverse now. And you can see that Americas are, and they're roughly half right now, and then we got Europe and Asia. But China's growing very, very rapidly. Let's just put it that way to be very clear. I'm very concerned about the ongoing, trade wars and the fights back and forth between Washington and Beijing about technology theft and all that kind of stuff. Just recently, I don't know if any of you have seen this, probably some of you have, but the U.S. just within the last week banned about 8 or 10 companies from China that were involved in security and things like that. Companies like iFlyTech, in artificial intelligence. They're concerned about that because of the widespread perception that AI companies from China, create data and send it, back to use it for an unfair competitive advantage. And so that'll be a new challenge for a lot of companies that are trying to go down that path. And I think if you can demonstrate clearly that that there are ways in their product to not allow this to happen, then that's not going to be a concern. But until that happens, I think some of these products from these Chinese companies like iFlyTech, Migapico, Yixin, and there's one other here that I can't read my own handwriting on. Yitu is one of them, and so those kinds of situations, we've got to figure out some solutions to those problems. I don't have them right here now, and we don't have time to talk about them anyway. But I think that leads into the fact that AI is really one of the technology's greatest opportunities ever, and I think it's probably fair to say that the Chinese got this started. And there are a couple of really famous books out on AI that were written by Chinese people. And the U.S. is getting caught up, but China is still very, very sophisticated in AI. This is a really, really huge opportunity. And it's disrupting virtually all of the new verticals that I'm going to talk about here in just a second. And it's the three leaders in this technology are China, the US, and Israel, not necessarily in that order. I think everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses. Israel is maybe the most innovative place in this area. China's probably the biggest, and the US is, thanks to Stanford and all the activities that many of you have financed here, there's a lot of widespread applications of AI here in a lot of different companies in different sectors here in the Valley right now. So, but the real message for all of you young people is that there are acute and very extreme global personnel shortages here. Now, what do I mean by the fact that data is the new oil? I heard that comment at an AI summit in New York about a year ago. And everything about AI is driven by data. It's like the way if I were simplistically describing it to my grandson, I would say you look at something that's actually happening in the real world, and you look at the data, and then you try to figure out how to piece that together and draw a conclusion from it and figure out the intelligence. And so the AI comes in and looks at the data and then figures out some algorithms or patterns in that data. And that's how it works and how people design systems. But any opportunities that people get to be involved in AI, if you're interested, I would strongly encourage you. I think it's going to be one of the biggest opportunities for a long time to come here. And I think we're just still scratching the surface on that based on my large number of years of being in the industry. All right, so I just updated all of my attractive sectors slide for this presentation. And the graphics are not as ideal as they should be, but here, I put the number one category as life sciences and bio and medical services, aging and disease prevention, correction, digital health, and pharma. I believe that very strongly. We have an aging population here, as does a lot of the rest of the world. And so figuring out ways to, continue to help people live healthy lives as they get older and not have them turn into, vegetables and all that kind of stuff is really, really important. A couple other new ones that were really high on at Impact is ag tech, and it's just getting started. This is in the real infancy of its business, and it's basically nothing more than figuring out creative ways to use technology in the world of agriculture, which is not historically been known for being a place where innovation occurred that often. TC infrastructure, 5G, that's pretty well written about in the press these days, and it's a lot of natural evolution of the network structures that are out there and innovative applications which take advantage of that new technology and that capability. Then we got the fintech stuff, which you all know about, crypto and Bitcoin and blockchain and innovative apps there. I'm very high on the Internet of Things. And this refers to new applications in which I'm involved on the board of a company over in the East Bay as a board member, and my partner Eric's also on the board, that is very much involved in IoT. It's called GlobeTouch. And Internet of Things is putting a large number, putting sensors everywhere in some kind of a complicated machine, and just having them do data sampling and collection and pumping it back to some other place. And so it's a key component of, go back to the data is the new oil. To get the data, you've got to go all the way out to the source of where the data is created. You can't wait for it to pass through 5 subsystems. You need to get it at the point of source, and that's really what IoT and innovative apps are all about. Next-gen vehicles are really an example of one of the places where IoT can be hugely applied. Next generation transportation, we all see the new bicycles and other modes of transportation. I mean, the car is under, it's under duress almost everywhere in the world. But put it to you this way, I'm not a large stockholder in any of the auto companies these days. And that's all going to go electric. Drone services is another one. We've got another great company in Impact, which is out not talking about drone hardware. Let's be sure about that. Talking about drone services. The best example that I remember, to just explain it in simple terms, hopefully, is that Mexican railroads, they go along a large stretch of track in Mexico where there's very little population or activity there, and if the trains would break down or something like that, or frequently they would be subjected to to robberies and things like that from bad guys that would come out and capture them in the middle of a barren spot, and then go in and rob some things and so on and so forth. But drone services can help prevent that, because if they know that they're being watched and that they can be captured basically by virtue of a photo from the crime commission, that tends to depress their desire and appetite to go out and pursue all of those nefarious activities. Robotics for sure, and also cybersecurity. I don't want to trivialize it because it's one of the most important things out here, but this is not a new concept, but it's still really, really important. And there's not a day goes by that you don't pick up your papers or whatever it is that you read your news on and see more signs of cyber invasions and attacks and so on and so forth. And then finally, climate control and next generation cloud infrastructure and applications. That's my new list, latest list of hot topics here. All right, now change the subject a little bit. Some other new trends in the industry. Female founders and female-driven companies are a very important force going forward here. This is a complete change from 5 to 10 years ago. And I don't think this trend has even begun to become critical mass yet. 2018 continued a decade-long trend of narrowing the gap between male and female entrepreneurs. Big improvement, 36% over the last 10 years. 163 million women in the world started new businesses last year, which is on top of the 111 women-owned businesses across the globe at the start of the year. And this is the global dollars invested in female-driven startups, or female-led startups. Founded, here. It's up 2017 to 18, it was up 97%. 2014 to 18, up 380%. So all you female entrepreneurs, if you have an entrepreneurial dream, the only thing that you'll ever not forgive yourself for in life is if you want to go do something like this and you don't take up that opportunity. Go try it. Even if you fail, you will be happy you tried, and you probably won't fail. Opportunities for female entrepreneurs are all over the world, too. You don't even have to pay attention to the details on the chart, but these are just some dots of where all that that activity is. But the good news is Silicon Valley is #2 in the world for female opportunities in entrepreneurship. I don't know the answer to that. I think New York. Oh, yeah, it is up there. I see it. I couldn't read the chart. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's in New York City right now. That's actually kind of shocking because New York City has never been number one in anything relating to entrepreneurship for as long as I can remember. And I used to work there a lot, so I think I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. Okay, unicorns on the rise for with female startups here. Okay, look at that: 18, 4, 6, 12, and then 11 year to date in 2019. So that'll be 4 straight years of increases on unicorns backed by or led by females. So keep up the good work, ladies. This is just a stat. I'm moving pretty close to wrapping up here. Just some interesting facts about opportunity and survival rate of new entrepreneurs. The new entrepreneurs by choice instead of necessity is 86%, and the survival of those is 79%. That's pretty good. 80%. That means that they're at least backed by great VCs like we have here in the Valley that can coach them and counsel them and help them make changes and persuade them to do what is in their own self-interest. And a great entrepreneur doesn't take long to convince to do whatever is in her or his best interest. And that's one of the real roles that a great VC can provide. Sorry, I went the wrong way again. Okay, I think this is the last one here. These are the top 5 innovation economies by region. North America's and Europe, that's all self-explanatory, but Asia is on the rise. It's probably growing more rapidly than any of the rest. I always think globally these days. Then we've got down Latin America is, where's number 4, Marlene? I can't read it. Yeah, 4 is Africa, and then 5 is South America, and 6 is Central and Southeastern Asia. Okay, I hope I've given you some inspiration today and some useful information, and I'm now willing to answer a few questions, and I'll be sticking around for a little while after the presentation is over. So open it for questions. Yeah.
You've been in the industry decades. How would you compare the current environment to 10 and 20 years ago?
It's much more mature. It's a lot bigger. But a lot of the fundamentals haven't changed that much at all. That's what I would say. But the technologies keep changing, and so the same old people that started these companies way back when. I was an expert in telecommunications when I came into the industry, and then I decided to broaden out a little bit and get involved in China. And I've been doing a lot of nonprofit work lately, and then learned how to run investment committees, things like that. Those are kind of some of the things that have changed in my life. But the importance, okay, the thing that's the same as it was back those days is that the opening speech. So I told you at the beginning I was going to talk to you about how important it is for job creation. Now I close by saying the same thing over again because that has not changed at all. The place where new jobs come from is from innovation-backed and venture-backed companies. They almost never come from really big companies. Big companies do incremental innovation very well, but they don't do any fundamental innovation. Big company research is, I think it's highly questionable how effective it is. If you go across a broad spectrum of industries and companies, they'd be far better off in those big companies not to spend that much money on research, but to go form partnerships with great venture firms and find the venture firms that fit whatever your corporate interest sector or segment is and match up with them and let them partner give them some money and tell them that if you bring us some new attractive opportunities, we'll continue to back you. And if you don't, we're not going to continue. And that's about the greatest incentive that, you know, corporate VC does play a role, for sure. But it needs to be managed by, you know, and people, a lot of people don't particularly appreciate all the subtleties there. And there's a million of them, and we don't have time to talk about those today. But did I answer your question? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll stick around for a little while afterward, and thank you very much, and it's an honor and pleasure to be back.